big things are happening over at PlayStation. We need to talk about it. Now, it took me way too many takes to get this correct, so let's try it here, and we're gonna one and done this thing. Jim Ryan thanks the PlayStation community as he announces his plans to retire from Sony Interactive Entertainment in March 2024. Bear in mind, Jim Ryan was the CEO. I don't know why that took me so many takes before. Okay, so let's talk about this. I talked about Xbox a week ago or so let's talk about Sony and PlayStation and, in my opinion, their overall state of change. PlayStation in a bit of an interesting position because, well, the PS5 is kinda selling well. Yeah, it turns out when the console's actually available, people will be able to buy it. I know, revolutionary new concept and idea here. But when it comes to each main console, I think there's normally one or two things each console could do way better to be in a far better position. For Xbox, I said they just need way better games of more consistent quality. For PlayStation, though, I'm gonna argue they need something a little bit different. I think they need two things fully. I think they need more games and more variety of games. Because I think they already have the quality. I love God of War. When I get a PlayStation game, I know that game is almost certainly going to hit. Everything I hear from Ratchet & Clank sounds like it's a good time. Demon's Souls looked fun. I loved God of War Ragnarok and Final Fantasy XVI, both of which were contenders for Game of the Year for me, of their respective years. Spider-Man 2 is looking incredible, and we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to start off 2024. The games they put out are of a high level. That's one of the reasons I have a PlayStation 5, because they have the games I care about, and overall the PS5 is good to, produce content for. It's a decent machine, and I wouldn't say PlayStation's foothold in the market or anything is perilous or tricky right now. But I think one of the big defining points of the last almost generation and a half at this point for the PlayStation system has been its perpetual pivot away from variety and having a lot of different first-party titles that are all of different genres to kind of focusing in on these narrative-rich experiences. Which I do like, but I also like variety. And that's not to say that the PS5 doesn't have some variety. You can't look at Ratchet & Clank and then look at The Last of Us 2 and say these are the same games. However, you put The Last of Us 2, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon, Final Fantasy XVI next to each other, yeah, they're all different games and they tackle different subject matters, but they're all kind of narrative-rich action games, in one way or the other. Again, they're not all the same, not even mostly the same, but they're all extremely narrative-rich. And what I'm saying is I think PlayStation would greatly benefit from having more variety. They have plenty of IP that they can work with. I don't know why they're so, pessimistic or so hesitant, for whatever reason, about bringing Bloodborne back. Do something with Ape Escape. Do something with Sly Cooper. It feels like Sony is doing what Square Enix has been hinting or even said they would do, which is focusing more so on their AAA releases, their big heavy hitters, focusing all their energy and effort into those games, and then for the mid-core games and everything else to pad out the experience, they can rely on third party. That at least seems to be the feel of things for me. It feels like PlayStation really wants to find their own niche in the games market. Some kind of identifiable trait that everyone can point to and say, oh, when I see or hear about this one concept, I immediately think of PlayStation. Xbox has that with Game Pass, a subscription-esque service that you sign up for and have an access to a catalog of games. PlayStation has something extremely similar, but if I tell you that concept, you're probably going to think about Game Pass. Rightly so, because Game Pass is a better model. The Xbox games go on that pass immediately, whereas for PlayStation, you have to wait. And the recent bad publicity they've gotten with upping the price of PlayStation Plus for no actual gain to the consumer doesn't help things here. What is Nintendo's niche? Well, it's portability. They have a console that is extremely weak in the power department compared to the Xbox, the PlayStation 5, or a PC. But what does the Switch make up for? Well, it has a swath of first-party games that are extremely different to one another, but it can also be played as an at-home console that you plug in, that you put in the dock, and then you just play, or you can take it out and play it like a mobile tablet. You have that functionality, that hybridization with the Nintendo Switch. When it comes to PlayStation, they are seemingly just trying to replicate those niche factors for those other consoles, but at a worse idea. PlayStation Plus is functional, but I wouldn't say it's as good as Game Pass. Likewise, PlayStation recently announced their new, Nintendo Switch Lite thing, or whatever the heck it is, that doesn't even work by itself. It needs to stream from the PS5, so you can't even leave your house with it, which defeats the functionality a great deal of the Nintendo Switch. And it's funny because amongst all of these misses and just near misses that PlayStation consistently puts out when it comes to peripherals or the actual policies and benefits, they put out good games. And it's those good games that drive people who want a console to the PlayStation. God of War is a great game. Final Fantasy XVI, in my opinion, is a great game. Spider-Man 2 looks like it will be a great game. The first Spider-Man was a great game. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth looks like it will be a great game. But when it comes to its first-party exclusives, they're kind of few and far between. You could make an argument here that PlayStation doesn't need to one-up the competition. They just need to have some version of what their competition puts out to dissuade people from swapping over from PlayStation. Because the tides, as right now, are going into PlayStation's favor. So PlayStation Plus doesn't need to be as good as Game Pass. But if you offer a service similar to Game Pass, may not be as good as Game Pass, but it's a version of it that could dissuade people from swapping over. I think they're going for that as well with that Nintendo Switch wannabe thing they're putting out for $200. I think they're gonna widely miss the mark with that, like they did with the PSV2. Oh, PSVR 2. I do not see this handheld thing selling well whatsoever. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm underestimating the number of people who really want to be able to stream from their PS5 onto a Nintendo Switch-esque console within the confines of their own home. Maybe I'm underestimating the amount of people who want that and are willing to fork over $200 for that, but I don't think I am. But what about Jim Ryan? Well, I don't think it would be fair to say, or fair to put all the blame for whatever issue you have with modern PlayStation and the PS5 onto Jim Ryan and his policy. He was the CEO, so he probably had some, if not most of it, but I don't see it all being because of him. And I don't think a simple change of CEO will completely remedy most of these changes. Maybe they could. That'd be cool. I would love to see that, because I don't want these styles of games that PlayStation have come to be known for to go away. I think God of War Ragnarok is really good. I would want another God of War. I want another game in the style of Final Fantasy XVI. These are really good games to me. They won't appeal to everyone, but what I think they need to do and focus in on is having variety and not underestimating the importance of having a mid-core, a swath of lower budget games that don't need to sell in the tens of millions of copies, but because they're lower budget, they can just fill the void between these big budget games, between these AAA releases. Nintendo does this pretty damn well. Think of all the Mario games that are coming out soon. We have a re-release of Thousand Year Door, Super Mario RPG, alongside Super Mario Wonder. So we're getting the big heavy hitter 2D platformer alongside these other spin-off games as well. You can have your Tears of the Kingdom alongside your Xenoblade Chronicles. And it's funny because I even prefer Xenoblade, it's my favorite game series. You can have your Mario Odysseys, but you can also have a Demon X Machinas. Not everybody has to play every game, but if you want there to be more of a reason for people to want to pick up a PlayStation and to stick in the PlayStation ecosystem, well, I think having a strong mid-core of first-party games that don't necessarily have to be AAA games is important. I do see this argument floating around a lot from PC gamers, where they go, okay, look, well, if you look at the console market, if you have a PC, what real motivation do you have to go for any console? There's no reason for the Xbox, because Xbox ports all their games to PC and has a PC version of Game Pass. That's fine. I don't view that as a critique against Xbox. I view that as a functionality of what Xbox is going for. When it comes to PlayStation, okay, well, PlayStation has a few key exclusives. And if those exclusives, like God of War, Horizon, Last of Us, Bloodborne, if they even remember that one, Spider-Man, if those games specifically appeal to you, then you may be able to value getting a PS5 enough for that. Outside of that, though, why would you get a PlayStation 5? Wouldn't the value proposition be far more incentivizing to the player if you had a bunch of variety games as well that don't necessarily all fall under the category of narrative-rich adventure. Because if you don't really care all that much about these heavily narrative-forward games, the PlayStation, compared to everything else, besides like a Switch, doesn't really offer all that much in the way of a benefit. Game Pass is a better system, PC's more flexible. It's a bit of more of an upfront cost, but you can make it back up in the back end with sales, alongside Game Pass. What would I like to see in the future for PlayStation? Well, like I said, I think they need more releases, and I think they need more variety releases. Have more games like Ratchet & Clank. They don't need to be to the scale of Rift Apart. Just have more games, expanding on your backlog. Bring back your Ape Escapes. Bring back Bloodborne, those types of games. Games that are wildly different from one another. And don't just focus in on these like hyper-realistic, narrative-forward experiences. Because those games are good, they have a place, but they don't need to be the only place. And I think it's chasing short-term profits over long-term success. Because I do think, yes, in the short term, you focus more of your money on putting out this big AAA release. In the short term, you probably will make more profit. However, I think the benefits to the console overall, over a longer period of time, will be increased. And we'll see more of an upside if you lean into having more variety, and not just relying on these big AAA, hyper-realistic, story-heavy games. PlayStation used to be known for variety. That's what put PlayStation on the map back in the PS1 and PS2 era. Because it just seemed like PlayStation had whatever you really cared about. It had platformers, it had shooters, it had action games, it had RPGs, it had everything. But then somewhere along the way, they started to focus in more and more on one type of game. There's still a little bit of variety to be had, but it feels like they want to push variety more onto third party. Hook you in with the first party with these story-rich experiences that are easily marketable and can sell well, and then rely on other people to push out variety. And sure, it may be available on an Xbox, but you already came over to PlayStation, didn't you? I think that's what they're aiming for. I just don't know if it's what they should be aiming for. And I think it would only be a benefit to the consumer if they strive to be even better. Expand on PlayStation Plus. Put your games on that platform day one to normalize it alongside Game Pass. I've been saying this for a long time, and I don't know if they would even consider it for whatever reason. I would love to see a PC launcher for PlayStation games. They port their PS games to PC about like a year and a half after they come out. Why not really like double down on that? Why not invest in the PC market? It's not like these types of games wouldn't succeed over there. It feels like PlayStation wants to overly rely on being a traditional console whilst trying to siphon off the good ideas the other competitors are having, but it's doing them at like lesser qualities and as lesser versions. PlayStation continues to kind of chase after trends instead of making them and becoming the trend. And maybe it's a pipe dream because, like I said, I don't think a new CEO for PlayStation will necessarily completely change the direction that PlayStation is heading in. But if it does, I think it'd be cool to see these types of changes be made to not only the console, the PS5, but to PlayStation as a brand as a whole. Focus in on the games, not these like peripherals that no one will buy, let's be honest. Put less of an emphasis on VR, focus in on these games, have more variety, and not be afraid to develop and flesh out your AA's and your A-list games. Not everything needs to be AAA. You can increase the value proposition of PlayStation Plus and the PlayStation Network and PlayStation as a whole by expanding on these mid-core games. And I know it's a pipe dream, but like, invest more into PC. I'm not expecting that. It's a pipe dream. If it happens, cool. I'm not expecting it. I don't think it needs to happen either. It would be nice to see though. But with that, I think I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day. Go play some video games if you can. And as always, I'll see you all next time. Leave a comment down below with what you would like to see change for Sony, for PlayStation as a brand. What practices or policies or games do you want to see made or changed going into the future? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again.